What's brought us here, you've heard the promos, hopefully you've been listening all morning, is the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Importantly, they are drawing attention, as they do every year, even last year when we had to skip this thing because of the pandemic. They draw attention to what's going on the southern border and the impact that illegal immigration is having on this country, and the absolutely maddening fact that this administration has reversed policies that were working. How can you be a sovereign nation if you don't have a border? They don't want a border. And there's maybe a variety of different reasons as to why that is. But what we're doing is examining some of the different impacts that that's having on America, just so you know. It's more than just, the drug problem that Sam Page talked about earlier, Sheriff Page from North Carolina. It's a whole litany of problems that affect the economy and everything else. Right now we're joined by Jason Richwine. He is a resident scholar at CIS, the Center for Immigration Studies, and I've been having Marc who founded CIS on my show for many years, talking about this back before Donald Trump fixed, or at least started to fix, the immigration problem, and now here we are. We find ourselves in a real mess. So, Jason, welcome back. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to meet you. What is your take on what it's going to take to reverse this disaster that's developing in slow motion on the southern border?
Well, I think what you said earlier is correct in that it was a deliberate policy change. If you think about the kinds of difficult situations or crises that presidents face, a lot of times it's not the president's fault. A lot of times these just come up sort of almost randomly, whether it be a pandemic or a foreign policy crisis or natural disaster. The disaster that's going on the border right now is not accidental. It was not something that happened randomly. It was a deliberate policy on the part of the Biden administration. They own this crisis, and as you said, it's the policies that they've adopted that have almost immediately opened up the border and attracted people to come to the border. What's happened is the potential migrants are not listening to what the administration is saying. They're just watching what they're doing. And so the president can get up there and say, the border is closed, don't worry about you can't come in, we're going to send you back. But when they see people being allowed to enter, all those family members, all those friends from back in whatever country they're coming from, see that and say, okay, I'm going to go there too.
And there's another migrant caravan heading north now, I understand, 20 or 25,000 people strong. You're right. And I remember when the vice president, Kamala Harris, claimed she was traveling to South America to address the root of the problem. And we were going to, by giving them money to fix streetlights, I think I heard Joe Biden say, we'll help them fix their crime problem, then they won't have to come to the U.S.
It's absurd. And it's so absurd that one wonders whether it is truly incompetence or whether it's deliberate. I hate to speculate on that, but we're at a point now where, that caravan you mentioned, there's going to be another one after that and another one after that. They will keep coming until the administration actually gets serious about making sure that people who come are not allowed to enter before they're fully processed.
Yeah, it's a good point. Jason Richwine with us from the Center for Immigration Studies. It bears repeating that one of my biggest pet peeves is when I get in a debate with somebody over this and they try to argue that because they have made it political, that for some reason people who supported Donald Trump are opposed to immigration. And one thing I've always talked to Marc about is that nothing can be further from the truth. I support legal immigration, but we just can't continue to be a sovereign nation and not have some control over what's going on our borders.
I think it's difficult to even talk about legal immigration if you can't actually control who comes in. We can have the most perfect legal immigration system imaginable on paper. We can say, here's exactly how many people we want to have. Here's exactly the skill backgrounds or the family relationships or whatever you think is important to select on for legal immigration. But if you can't actually control who comes in, legal immigration policy becomes a sham, and that is essentially what it is right now.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. So what are the bigger impacts of this? Everybody talks about the fact that, well, these folks are going to come in and they're going to take jobs away from Americans. You've written a paper on this as a scholar. What are the other impacts you're seeing?
Oh, I mean, immigration is a potentially transformative issue. I mean, it has not just legal impacts or economic, social, cultural, political, as all of those things. And that's what's so deeply frustrating about the issue is that when you allow so many illegal immigrants to arrive and to stay, then you not only are not enforcing the law, you're fundamentally changing the country in a way that we have not voted to do. You know, if we want to have, say, 500,000 legal immigrants, then that's fine. That's who we'll accept. But when we haven't even voted for this, and it's fundamentally changing the country in so many ways, that I think is what leads to the tremendous frustration on people's parts.
Well, we've seen it in France. Certainly, France pops into mind simply because of, when they had that terrorist attack over in, I believe it was in Nice, where the guy drove the truck into the crowd of people, and they found out that he was a French resident, but who had immigrated there as a child, or maybe even his parents had immigrated there, and he might even have been born there. He didn't speak French, and he had never assimilated into French society. And again, I'm not saying that's all of these folks that are coming in, but if there's not some attempt made to assimilate once you're here, that also is damaging.
I mean, the most salient issue on that point is the Afghan refugees that or I shouldn't say refugees, really, parolees, actually, is the technical term, who have been allowed in. Europe has had a tremendous problem with Afghan migrants ever since the major migrant wave. I think it was in the middle part of the last decade, going to places like Germany and Austria, and they've had issues, particularly crime. And so far, in the past, the U.S. has not had that much of a problem with Afghan refugees. We've had very small numbers of them up until this point, and they were probably, better selected than average. Mm-hmm. But the ones who are coming now, I mean, let's face it, the sort of debacle of the escape from Afghanistan meant that there is no true vetting of such people coming in, and the idea that they are all battlefield interpreters who stood side by side with American soldiers, there's just no way. In fact, very few are even getting the special immigrant visas that would be reserved for such people. Most are just parolees, meaning they're not really refugees, they're not special immigrant visas, but the president is just giving them special dispensation.
Yeah, is SIV the term you were using there?
Yeah,
special immigrant visa.
Right.
And we know that some of these folks haven't been vetted. I read an interesting article the other day because the same people that want unfettered entry into the country for all of these folks were suddenly horrified to find out that a lot of these 60-year-old men who were coming here were married to 12-year-old girls who were married off by their families before they left Afghanistan, and that's something that's totally accepted.
Look, if you're talking about cultural chasms,
yes,
there's no larger one probably than the one between the United States and Afghanistan. Pew did a survey in 2013 about various views of Afghans. 99% supported Sharia law. 85% wanted to stone adulterers. 61% wanted to apply Sharia to non-Muslims in the country. And I think that there's a mistaken view among some people that if you're anti-Taliban, that must mean you're anti-Islamic fundamentalism. And that's really just a fundamental mistake about what that civil war is and what's going on there. It's primarily a tribal war. It's not necessarily a war over Islam. And as I said, in the past, we can get a special selection of Afghans so that they really are more pro-Western. I am far less confident that we've done that this time because of so little vetting and the chaos that was ensuing while that evacuation was taking place.
Wow.
We've already had 2 sexual assaults at military bases, Fort McCoy, Fort Bliss, by these Afghan parolees. I mean, I don't want to be sort of flippant about it, but they couldn't even wait till they get off the military base. This is something that's concerning.
Yeah, it definitely is concerning. I'm interested in you seem to have an in-depth knowledge of Afghanistan. I've made the point before that the biggest problem anybody ever had going into Afghanistan is thinking they could democratize it because of the many different factions that have existed. It's a tribal issue, right?
Yes, I mean, the Taliban, primarily the Pashtuns from the southern part of the country, a lot of Pashtuns in Pakistan as well. I mean, Afghanistan is not a ethno-culturally coherent country. It is many different tribes, and they've been battling for power for a long time. The Northern Alliance, where I believe it was Tajiks and some other ethnic groups, that's the fundamental conflict, and it's not going away.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of sad that it took 20 years for us to realize we weren't going to turn it into a liberal democracy.
No, that's true. And everybody who's tried it there has failed, right? The British occupied it for hundreds of years.
The Soviets?
The Soviets failed there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a disaster. Jason Richwine, our guest here from the Center for Immigration Studies. Jason, listen, this is I love having you on here because it gives people an idea of how far beyond this goes than just border security, right? Because it's going to impact everybody's life, even if they're in St. Louis, hundreds of miles from the border. We just got 1,500 of those Afghan refugees, so there's going to be at least some impact there, not counting the number of illegal folks that the Biden administration might have bussed in.
It's a transformative policy. It's fundamentally transforming the country, and we should at least be able to vote on such things.
You would think so. Listen, Jason Richwine, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, give my best to Marc Krikorian, please, when you get back over there